The night I found the text, room 312. 8 p.m. Don't keep me waiting this time. Was the night my marriage split open like a rotten fruit. My name is Linda Carter. I'm a pediatric nurse in Vancouver, married to Thomas, a corporate lawyer with a smile that could thaw ice and a secret that would freeze my heart. We had been drifting for months, his late nights and sudden business trips piling up like unpaid bills. But nothing prepared me for what I saw at the Harborfront Hotel. I followed him there, my hands trembling on the steering wheel, rain smearing the city lights into watercolor streaks. He didn't even glance over his shoulder as he strode into the lobby, confidence oozing like always. I waited numb, in the parking lot until a silhouette appeared in a third-floor window. A woman, her red hair aflame against the glass. Then Thomas stepped into view, his hands already on her waist, pulling her close. I don't know how long I stood in that hallway outside room 312, ear pressed to the door. Their laughter was low, intimate. A glass clinked. Then silence, sharp as a knife, before her breathy moans slithered through the wood. Thomas. My knees buckled. I could smell her perfume through the door, jasmine and danger. I didn't scream. I didn't burst in. I ran, heels echoing like gunshots down the stairwell, until I collapsed at a dive bar 2 blocks away. That's where he found me. James. Broad-shouldered, with eyes like storm clouds and a voice that made you lean in. Rough night? He asked, sliding into the booth. His presence was too deliberate, too knowing. When I didn't answer, he placed a photo on the table. Thomas, laughing at a cafe with a brunette I didn't recognize. Then another. Thomas handing an envelope to a man in a leather jacket. Your husband's in trouble, James said, his gaze steady. And the woman he's with tonight? She's not just some mistress. I stared at him, vodka burning my throat. Who are you? He leaned closer. Someone who's been watching Thomas for months. That woman. Her name's Karen. She's dangerous. Dangerous how? James hesitated, then dropped the bomb. She's an undercover investigator. And she's not the only one your husband's been involved with. The room tilted. Investigator? I pictured her again. Red hair, painted lips, her nails digging into Thomas' shoulders. Why? I whispered. James' jaw tightened. Thomas is mixed up in something ugly. Money laundering. Karen's job was to get close to him. But she's gone rogue. We think she's playing both sides. I laughed, wild and brittle. So what? You want me to help you? I want you to stay alive, he said, deadly serious. Thomas is in over his head. And Karen? She's not done with him. He left me with a burner phone and a warning. Don't confront him yet. She's armed. Linda. And she's not afraid to use it. I drove home in a daze. Thomas was asleep on the couch, his shirt still smelling of jasmine. I stood over him, clutching the burner phone, wondering how many lies could fit inside one man. Then his phone buzzed. A new message lit up the screen. Tomorrow. My place. Bring the files. And a name ID never seen before. Betty. The name Betty burned in my mind like a lit fuse. I spent the night wide-eyed, watching Thomas' chest rise and fall on the couch, his phone still clutched in my sweaty palm. By dawn, I had memorized the address he had been sent. The Aurora Suites, 10 a.m. A luxury boutique hotel downtown, where rooms cost more than my monthly salary. James answered the burner phone on the first ring. Don't go alone, he warned. But I hung up. Trust was a currency I had run out of. I wore dark sunglasses and a scarf to hide my face, parking 2 blocks from the Aurora. The lobby smelled of cedar and money, all marble floors and orchids in crystal vases. I lingered near the elevators, heart hammering, until Thomas stepped inside. Floor 5. The 5th floor hallway was silent, carpet muffling my steps. Room 512. I pressed my ear to the door and heard her first, a laugh like wind chimes. Betty. You're late, she purred. Traffic, Thomas replied, his tone slick. You know how it is. A zipper hissed. Fabric rustled. My stomach turned. Don't look. Don't. But I peered through the keyhole. Betty was younger than Karen, mid-20s, honey blonde, with a dancer's grace. She stood in a lace-trimmed robe, pouring champagne. Thomas sat on the edge of the bed, loosening his tie. The files, she said, nodding at a leather briefcase. He smirked. You'll get them. After. She slid the robe off her shoulders. It pooled at her feet, revealing a black lingerie set that made my breath catch. Thomas reached for her, but she stepped back, lifting the champagne flute. Patience, she teased, trailing the glass down her collarbone, letting droplets slide between her breasts. I wanted to vomit. I wanted to scream. But I froze, transfixed, as she straddled him, her nails raking his scalp. Their kiss was slow, deliberate, a performance. Or a transaction. Then Thomas' phone rang. He pulled back, scowling. I have to take this. Betty pouted but sauntered to the window, her back to me. As Thomas muttered into the phone, "No, the transfer's delayed," she turned. And winked. At the keyhole. My blood turned to ice. She strode to the door, flinging it open before I could run. "Hello, Linda," she said, smiling like a cat with a bird in its teeth. Thomas shot to his feet. What the hell? Betty ignored him, gripping my wrist and yanking me inside. You're right on time. What's going on? Thomas barked, face flushed. Betty tossed him the briefcase. Your wife just saved me the trouble of blackmailing you. Open it. Hands shaking, he unclasped the case. Stacks of blank paper stared back. You're not the only one who plays games, Thomas, Betty said, her voice hardening. I've been auditing your files for weeks. The offshore accounts, the shell companies, child's play. He lunged at her, but she pulled a taser from her garter belt, zapping the air. Seat. Down. Thomas collapsed onto the bed, chest heaving. Betty turned to me. Your husband isn't just a cheater. He's a thief. And Karen? She's his partner. Or was, until she decided to cut him out. Bullshit. Thomas spat. Betty tossed a photo onto the bed. Karen, grinning beside a man in a ski mask, stacks of cash between them. She's been funneling his dirty money into her own pockets. My job was to prove it. She eyed me. But you're the wild card, Linda. James said you'd come. James. My throat tightened. You're working with him? He's my partner. We're with the Financial Crimes Unit. Karen's our problem, and now she's yours. She handed me a USB drive. Everything's here. Bank records, emails, footage of Thomas and Karen in compromising situations. Thomas lunged again, but Betty tossed him in the thigh. He crumpled with a howl. Run, Linda, she said. Karen knows you're digging. She won't hesitate to. The door exploded open. Karen stood in the threshold, red hair wild, a pistol aimed at my chest. Oh, honey, she crooned. You just had to poke the bear. Karen's pistol gleamed under the hotel's chandelier, her finger taut on the trigger. Time slowed. Thomas groaned on the floor, clutching his tasered leg. Betty stood frozen near the bed, her gaze darting to the USB drive in my hand. Give it to me, Karen hissed, stepping closer. The scent of jasmine, her perfume, flooded the room, souring my stomach. Or I paint these sheets with your brains. I tightened my grip on the USB. You'll kill me either way. Her laugh was razor-edged. Smart girl. But I'll make it quick if you cooperate. Betty inched toward the nightstand. Karen whipped the gun toward her. Dum. A memory flashed. Thomas, 2 months earlier, stumbling home at dawn, his collar smudged with red lipstick. Late client meeting, he had said. I had almost believed him. Now, staring at Karen's sneer, I saw the truth. Their affair wasn't just business. It was hunger. I had seen them together once, though I didn't realize it at the time. A fundraiser for Thomas' firm. Karen had been there in a backless crimson gown, Thomas' hand lingering too long on her hip as they laughed by the champagne tower. Later, I had found them in the parking garage, her pressed against his car, his mouth on her neck. Networking, head shrugged. You loved him, I blurted, the USB digging into my palm. Karen's eye twitched. Love's for idiots. Money lasts longer. Then why keep sleeping with him? She stepped closer, the barrel hovering an inch from my forehead. Because he's easy. A few moans, a couple promises, and head hand over his entire portfolio. Her voice dropped. Just like you're going to hand me that drive. Thomas stirred, his voice slurry with pain. Karen donc. Shut up, she snapped. You had your chance. You got greedy. Betty lunged for the taser. Karen fired. The bullet tore through Betty's shoulder, slamming her into the wall. She screamed, crimson blooming down her blouse. Thomas scrambled backward, panic-stricken, as Karen swung the gun back to me. Last chance, Linda. A shadow moved in the hallway. James. He pressed a finger to his lips, a revolver in his other hand. I swallowed. Take it. I held out the USB, my arm trembling. Karen snatched it, triumph flaring in her eyes, just as James fired. The shot ripped through her wrist. She shrieked, the gun clattering to the floor. James kicked it away and pinned her against the wall, his arm braced against her throat. You're slipping, Karen, he growled. Should have checked your 6. Betty whimpered, clutching her shoulder. James. She's got backup coming. I know. He yanked Karen's arms behind her back, cuffing her. But we've got what we need. He nodded at the USB. Thanks to Linda. Karen spat at my feet. You think you've won? Thomas is a cockroach. Hell flip on you. On her. James ignored her, turning to me. You okay? I wasn't. The room reeked of blood and gunpowder. Thomas crouched in the corner, hollow-eyed. A stranger. Betty's breaths came in shallow gasps. You lied, I said to James. You said Betty was your partner. He hesitated. She is. But Karen's not the only one playing the long game. Footsteps thundered in the hall. 3 men in black suits burst in, guns drawn. Federal agents. One barked. Everyone down. James raised his hands, calm. Stand down, fellas. We're all on the same side. The lead agent scowled. James Walker. You're wanted for obstruction of justice and unauthorized surveillance. My chest tightened. Obstruction? James shot me a look. Apology? Warning? As they shoved him against the wall. Linda, whatever they tell you, don't believe it. Karen laughed, blood dripping from her wrist. Oh, this is rich. The golden boy's a fugitive. The agents hauled James away. He didn't resist. His storm cloud eyes locked on mine until the door closed. An agent nudged me. Ma'am, you need to come with us. Thomas lurched forward. Wait. I can explain. The agent tossed him again. As they led me out, Betty grabbed my arm, her face ashen. James isn't who you think, she whispered. He's not FCU. He's private sector. Hired by those mass rivals to sink him. The floor dropped beneath me. Then why help me? Because Karen's the bigger threat. She winced, blood seeping through her fingers. And because James. He wanted you safe. For some reason. The agents pulled me into the hall. Downstairs. Sirens wailed. I glanced back once, at Thomas twitching on the floor, at Karen's smoldering glare, at Betty's pale face, before the elevator doors shut. In the lobby, a TV screen blared the noon news. Prominent lawyer Thomas Carter under investigation for fraud and alleged ties to organized crime. A hand gripped my elbow. Let's go, Ms. Carter. But it wasn't an agent. It was a woman with a scar down her cheek and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Karen's friends want a word. The woman with the scar steered me into a black van, her grip vice-like. Duct tape scratched my wrists, a hood stifling my screams. We drove for hours, the roads hum a grim lullaby. When the hood ripped off, I blinked under a flickering bulb in a derelict warehouse. The air reeked of oil and iron. 3 men circled me, their faces masked. The scarred woman leaned against a rusted forklift, flipping a knife. Where's the money? She hissed. I don't know what you're talking about. I choked. She backhanded me. Blood bloomed on my tongue. Karen said Thomas stashed $5 million offshore. You're gonna tell us where. So that's why they kept him alive. I spat red. Thomas doesn't trust me with grocery lists. You think he'd share that? The tallest mask yanked my hair, exposing my throat. Maybe pain'll jog your memory. A gunshot cracked. Mask number 1 dropped. Chaos erupted. Shadows moved like wolves. James, a silhouette with a pistol, firing precise, brutal shots. Scarface lunged, knife glinting, but he disarmed her with a twist, snapping her wrist. She crumpled, cursing. He untied me, hand steady. Can you run? I nodded, adrenaline numbing the ache. We fled into the night. His motorcycle roaring to life. I clung to him, the city lights blurring. He stopped at a safe house, a cramped loft smelling of gun oil and coffee. I collapsed on a threadbare couch. "Why?" I demanded. "Who are you?" James poured whiskey, his storm cloud eyes weary. "Karen and I. We were partners. FBI, years ago. She got greedy, faked her death, rebuilt herself in the underworld. I quit, went private. Though mass rivals hired me to expose him. Then I found you. You didn't find me. You used me. At first." He knelt, voice softening. "But watching you fight survive. I couldn't let you drown in this mess." A memory flickered, a charity gala, years ago. James in a tux, glancing at me across the room. Thomas whispering, "Competition's here." "You knew me," I breathed. His thumb grazed my bruised cheek. "I've always known you." The USB drive glinted on the table. He plugged it in. Files cascaded, bank codes, photos of Thomas with politicians, a video. I pressed play. Karen, laughing, handed a briefcase to a senator's aide. "Tell your boss his investments are safe," she purred. James froze. "That aide died last year. Car accident." The screen flickered. A new file. Project Phoenix. I opened it. Crypto accounts. Blueprints. Names. Including mine. "They've been watching you," James muttered. Long before Thomas. A key turned in the door. Betty stepped in, bandaged, aiming a Glock at James. "Sorry, love. The bid for the USB just went up." Betty's Glock wavered between James and me, her bandaged shoulder trembling. "The USB," she repeated. "Now." James stepped forward, shielding me. "You're making a mistake, Betty. This isn't just about money anymore." "Isn't it?" She smirked, sweat beading on her brow. "Project Phoenix is worth billions. And you," she glared at me, "are the key." The words punched through me. "The key." James inched toward the table where the USB lay. Betty fired. The bullet grazed his arm, but he lunged, tackling her. They crashed into the wall, the gun skidding toward me. I grabbed it, hand shaking. "Stop. Now." Betty froze, James pinning her. "You don't understand," she rasped. "They'll kill my sister if I don't deliver the files." "Who's they?" I demanded. The door burst open. Karen stood framed in moonlight, her wounded wrist bandaged, a smirk on her lips. The kind of people who make corpses disappear. James tensed. "Karen. Save it." She tossed a phone onto the table. A live video played, a bunker filled with lab equipment, vials labeled Phoenix, 12, and a woman bound to a chair, Betty's twin. "Your sister's alive. For now." Betty sagged. I had no choice. Karen snatched the USB. "Project Phoenix isn't a cash grab. It's a bioweapon. And Linda," she turned to me, mock pitying. "Your hospital administered the trial drug to kids last year. You signed off on it." Ice flooded my veins. The pediatric trials. Parents trusting me with their children's lives. All while the mass firm funded it. "I didn't know," I whispered. "Of course not." Karen rolled her eyes. "You were the perfect pawn. Blameless. Believable." She pocketed the USB. "But the clock's ticking. Phoenix, 12 goes airborne in 6 hours unless I get paid." James stood slowly. "Where's the drop?" Karen arched a brow. "Why? Planning to play hero?" "No." He pulled a detonator from his jacket. "Planning to burn it all down." The room stilled. "The bunker's rigged," he said. "Your buyers, your lab, poof. Unless you hand over the antidote formula." Karen laughed. "You're bluffing." He pressed the button. A distant explosion rattled the windows. Karen's smile died. "You idiot. They'll hunt you forever." "Let them." He grabbed my hand. "The real formula's in your head, Linda. You reviewed the trials. The data's yours." Memories flashed. Spreadsheets, fever charts, a child's recovery against all odds. The outlier cases. ID documented them, never connecting the dots. "We can reverse engineer it," I said, hope surging. "Stop the outbreak." Karen raised her gun. "Not happening." A shot rang out. Betty slumped, a red stain spreading on her chest. Karen's bullet meant for James. He returned fire, hitting Karen's thigh. She collapsed, cursing. We ran. Through alleys, over fences, until we reached Jameis' bike. Dawn bled across Vancouver as we sped to the hospital, my mind racing. In the lab, I combed through files, cross-referencing my old notes. James guarded the door, his arm bleeding. Got it. I finally breathed. A compound derived from the recovered patient's blood. A cure. We uploaded the formula anonymously, triggering a global alert. By noon, news channels blared. Bioweapon threat neutralized. Suspects in custody. Thomas was arrested. Karen vanished. Betty's sister was freed. James and I stood on the harbor, the wind sharp with salt and closure. What now? I asked. He kissed my forehead. Whatever you want. I chose freedom. Epilogue. 1 year later, I received a postcard. No message, just an address. A seaside clinic in Costa Rica. When I arrived, James was there, tending to a rescued howler monkey. He smiled. Heard you needed a fresh start. I stayed. Some stories end with explosions. Ours began with silence, the kind that heals. If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more gripping tales. Your support helps us bring you deeper into worlds where secrets unravel and hearts fight to survive. Click the bell icon so you never miss a chapter. Until next time, stay curious.